This is Warriors Into the Wild, Chapter 5. Hey, Firepaw, wake up! Graypaw's meow broke into Firepaw's dream. He had been chasing a squirrel, up and up, into the topmost branches of a tall oak. Training begins at sunrise. Dustpaw and Sandpaw are already up, Graypaw added urgently. Firepaw stretched sleepily, then remembered. Today was his first day of training. He leaped to his paws. His drowsiness evaporated as excitement surged through his veins. Graypaw was giving himself a hasty wash. Between licks, he meowed, "I've just spoken to Lionheart. Ravenpaw won't be training with us till his wound is better. He'll probably stay at Spotted Leaf's den for another day or two. Dustpaw and Sandpaw are on hunting duty, so Lionheart thought you and I could train with him and Tigerclaw this morning. We'd better hurry, though," he added. "They'll be waiting." Graypaw led Firepaw quickly through the gorse entrance of the camp and up the side of the rock-strewn valley. As they climbed over the crest of the ravine, a cool breeze ruffled their fur. Fat white clouds raced across the blue sky overhead. Firepaw felt fierce joy well up inside of him as he followed Graypaw down a tree-shaded slope and into a sandy hollow. Tigerclaw and Lionheart were indeed waiting, sitting a few tail lengths apart on the sun-warmed sand. "In the future, I expect you both to be punctual," growled Tigerclaw. "Don't be too severe, Tigerclaw. It was a busy night last night. I expect they were tired," meowed Lionheart gently. "You have not been assigned a mentor, Firepaw," he went on. "For now, Tigerclaw and I will share your training." Firepaw nodded enthusiastically, his tail held high, unable to disguise his delight at having two such great warriors as his mentors. "Come," meowed Tigerclaw impatiently. "Today we are going to show you the edges of our territory, so that you know where you will be hunting, and what boundaries you need to protect. Graypaw, it won't do you any harm to remind yourself of the clan's outer limits." Without another word, Tigerclaw leaped up and bounded out of the sandy hollow. Lionheart nodded to Graypaw, and they took off with equal speed. Firepaw scrambled after them, his paws slipping on the soft sand. The trees were thick in this part of the forest, birch and ash trees overshadowed by mighty oaks. The ground was carpeted with crisp dead leaves that rustled beneath their paws. Tigerclaw paused to spray his scent on a thick clump of ferns. The other cats stopped beside him. "There is a two-leg path here," murmured Lionheart. "Use your nose, Firepaw. Can you smell anything?" Firepaw sniffed. There was the faint scent of a two-leg, and the stronger smell of a dog, familiar to him from his old home. Two-leg has walked his dog along here, but they are gone now," he mewed. "Good," meowed Lionheart. "Do you think it is safe to cross?" Firepaw sniffed again. The odors were weak and seemed overlaid with fresher forest smells. "Yes," he replied. Tigerclaw nodded, and the four cats stalked out from beneath the ferns and crossed the sharp stones of the narrow two-leg path. The trees beyond were pine. They grew tall and straight, row after row. It was easy to walk silently here. The ground was thick with layers of dead needles, which prickled against Firepaw's pads but felt spongy underneath. There was no undergrowth here to hide in, and Firepaw sensed tension in the other cats as they stalked unprotected between the tree trunks. "Two-legs put these trees here," meowed Tigerclaw. "They cut them down with foul-smelling creatures which spew enough fumes to make a kit go blind. Then they take the fallen trees to the tree-cut place that lies near here." Firepaw stopped and listened for the roar of the tree-eater, which he had heard before. "The tree-cut place will be silent for a few moons more, until the time of Greenleaf," explained Graypaw, noticing his pause. The cats padded on through the pine forest. "Two-leg place lies in that direction," meowed Tigerclaw, flicking his thick tail to one side. "No doubt you can smell it, Firepaw. Today, however, we will head the other way." Eventually they reached another two-leg path that marked the far edge of the pine forest. They quickly crossed over into the safe bushes of the oak woods beyond, but Firepaw still sensed anxiety in the other cats. "We're approaching RiverClan territory," whispered Graypaw. "The Sunning Rocks are over there." He pointed with his soft muzzle to a treeless mound of boulders. Firepaw felt his fur stand on end. This was where Redtail had been slain. Lionheart stopped by a flat gray rock. This is the boundary between ThunderClan and RiverClan territory. RiverClan rules the hunting grounds beside this great river. He meowed. Breathe deeply, Firepaw. The pungent smell of unfamiliar cats hit the roof of Firepaw's mouth. He was surprised how different it smelled from the warm cat scents of the ThunderClan camp. And he was also surprised to realize just how familiar and comforting the ThunderClan scents seemed to him already. That is the smell of RiverClan, TigerClaw growled beside him. Remember it well. It will be the strongest at the boundary, because their warriors will have scent-marked the trees along here. With these words, the dark tabby lifted his tail and sprayed his own mark on the flat rock. We'll follow this boundary line, as it leads straight to the 4 trees, Lionheart meowed. He set off quickly, away from the sunning rocks, followed by TigerClaw. Graypaw and Firepaw trotted after them. What is 4 trees? Firepaw panted. It is where the territories of all 4 clans meet, replied Graypaw. There are 4 great oaks there, as old as the clans. Be quiet, ordered TigerClaw. Don't forget how close we are to enemy territory. The 2 apprentices fell silent, and Firepaw concentrated on walking silently. They crossed a shallow stream, keeping their paws dry by leaping from boulder to boulder across the pebbly riverbed. By the time they reached 4 trees, Firepaw was feeling completely out of breath, and his paws ached. He wasn't used to traveling so far and so fast. He was quite relieved when Lionheart and TigerClaw led them out of the thick woods and stopped at the brow of a bush-covered slope. It was sun-high now. The clouds had cleared, and the wind had dropped. Below, in the dazzling sunlight, stood 4 enormous oaks, their dark green crowns reaching almost to the top of the steep slope. As Graypaw told you, meowed Lionheart to Firepaw, this is 4 trees, where the territories of all 4 clans meet. WindClan governs the high ground ahead of us, where the sun sets. You won't be able to catch their scent today. The wind is blowing towards them, but you'll learn it soon enough. And ShadowClan holds power over there, in the darkest part of the forest, added Graypaw, flicking his head sideways. The elders say that the cold winds from the north blow over the ShadowClan cats and chill their hearts. So many clans, Firepaw exclaimed, and so well organized, he added to himself, remembering Smudge's lurid tales of wild cats wreaking terror in the forest. You see now why prey is so precious, meowed Lionheart, why we must fight to protect what little we have. But that seems foolish. Why can't the clans work together and share their hunting grounds, instead of fighting each other? Firepaw suggested boldly. A shocked silence greeted his words. TigerClaw was the first to reply. That is treacherous thinking, Kitty Pet, he snapped. Don't be too fierce, TigerClaw, warned Lionheart. The ways of the clans are new to this apprentice. He looked at Firepaw. You speak from your heart, young Firepaw. This will make you a stronger warrior one day. TigerClaw growled. Or it might make him give in to Kitty Pet weakness right at the moment of attack. Lionheart glanced briefly at TigerClaw before he continued. The 4 clans do come peacefully together in a gathering each moon. Here, he bent his head towards the 4 mighty oaks below, is where they meet. The truce lasts for as long as the moon is at its fullest. Then there must be a meeting very soon? Firepaw suggested, remembering how bright the moonlight had been the night before. Indeed there is, answered Lionheart, sounding impressed. Tonight, in fact. The gatherings are very important, because they allow the clans to come together in peace for one night. But you must understand that longer alliances bring more trouble than they're worth. It is our clan loyalty that makes us strong, TigerClaw meowed in agreement. If you weaken that loyalty, you weaken our chances of survival. Firepaw nodded. I understand, he mewed. Come on, meowed Lionheart, standing up. Let's keep moving. They paced along the ridge of the valley where 4 trees stood. Now they were heading away from the sun as it began to sink in the afternoon sky. They crossed the stream at a place where it was narrow enough to leap over in one jump. Firepaw sniffed the air. A new cat scent touched his mouth glands, strong and sour. Which clan is that? He asked. ShadowClan, answered TigerClaw grimly. We are traveling along their border. Keep your wits about you, Firepaw. Fresher scents mean that a Shadow Clan patrol is in the area." As Firepaw nodded, he heard a new voice. He stiffened, but the other cats kept up their pace, heading straight for the ominous rumbling. "What's that?" he called, trotting to catch up with them. "You'll see in a moment," replied Lionheart. Firepaw peered through the trees ahead. They seemed to be getting thinner, letting in a broad band of sunlight. "Are we at the edge of the woods?" he asked. Then he stopped and took a deep breath. The green forest scents were overlaid with other strange, dark smells. This time it was not cat scent, but an odor that reminded him of his two-leg home. And the rumbling was getting louder, a ceaseless roar that made the ground tremble and ached in Firepaw's ears. "This is the Thunder Path," meowed Tigerclaw. Firepaw followed as Lionheart led them towards the edge of the forest. Then he sat down, and all four cats looked out. Firepaw could see a gray path like a river, cutting its way through the forest. The hard gray stone stretched ahead of him so far that the trees on the other side seemed blurred and tiny. Firepaw shuddered at the bitter smell that rose from the path. Next moment he leaped back, his fur bristling as a gigantic monster roared past. The branches of the trees on either side flapped madly in the wind that chased the speeding monster. Firepaw stared around at the other cats, his eyes wide, unable to speak. He had seen paths like this before near his old two-leg home, but never this wide, nor with monsters so swift and fierce. "Scared me too the first time," remarked Graypaw. "But at least it helps to keep Shadow Clan warriors from crossing into our territory. The Thunder Path runs from many paw steps along our boundary line. And don't worry, those monsters never seem to leave the Thunder Path. You'll be fine as long as you don't go too near." "It's time we returned to camp," meowed Lionheart. "You have seen all of our boundaries now, but we'll avoid Snake Rocks, even though the way around is longer. An untrained apprentice would be easy prey for an adder, and I expect you are getting tired, Firepaw." Firepaw couldn't help feeling relieved at the thought of returning to camp. His head was spinning with all the new smells and sights, and Lionheart was right. He was tired and hungry. He fell in behind Graypaw, and the cats turned away from the Thunder Path and headed back into the forest. The dewy scents of evening filled the air as Firepaw made his way through the gorse entrance into the ThunderClan camp. Fresh kill was waiting for them. Firepaw and Graypaw took their share from the pile that lay in the shady part of the clearing, and carried it to the tree stump outside their quarters. Dustpaw and Sandpaw were already there, munching hungrily. "Hi there, kitty pet," meowed Dustpaw, narrowing his eyes scornfully at Firepaw. "Enjoy the food we caught for you." "Who knows? You might even learn to catch your own one day," sneered Sandpaw. "Are you two still on hunting duty?" asked Graypaw innocently. "Never mind. We've been patrolling our territory borders. You'll be glad to know it's all safe." "I'm sure the other clans were terrified when they smelled you two coming," yelled Dustpaw. "They didn't even dare show their faces," retorted Graypaw, unable to hide his anger. "Well, we'll ask them tonight when we see them at the gathering," mewed Sandpaw. "Are you going?" Firepaw blurted out, impressed in spite of the apprentice's hostility. "Of course," replied Dustpaw loftily. "It's a great honor, you know. But don't worry, we'll tell you all about it in the morning." Graypaw ignored Dustpaw's gloating and started eating his fresh kill. Firepaw was hungry too, and crouched down to eat. He couldn't help feeling a twinge of envy that Dustpaw and Sandpaw were actually going to meet the other clans tonight. A loud call from Bluestar made Firepaw look up. He watched several of the clan warriors and elders gather in the clearing. It was time for the clan party to leave for the gathering. Dustpaw and Sandpaw leaped to their feet and trotted off to join the other cats. "Bye, you two," called Sandpaw over her shoulder. "Have a nice, quiet evening." The assembled cats stalked out of the camp entrance in single file, with Bluestar at the head. Her fur glowed like silver in the moonlight, and she looked calm and confident as she led her clan to the brief truce between old enemies. "Have you ever been to a gathering?" Firepaw asked Graypaw wistfully. "Not yet," replied Graypaw, crunching loudly on a mouse bone. "But it won't be long now, just you wait. All the apprentices get to go sometime." The two apprentices ate the rest of their meal in silence. When they had finished, Graypaw wandered over to Firepaw and began to groom his head. Together they washed, sharing tongues as Firepaw had seen the other cats do when he first arrived. Then, tired after the long trek, they pushed their way into their den. They settled down in their nests and quickly fell asleep. The following morning, Graypaw and Firepaw arrived early at the sandy hollow. They had crept out before Sandpaw and Dustpaw woke. Firepaw had been eager to hear about the gathering, but Graypaw had dragged him away. "You'll hear all about it later if I know those two," he had mewed. It promised to be another warm day, and this time Ravenpaw came to join them. Thanks to Spotted Leaf, his wound was healing well. Graypaw played around, scooping leaves into the air and leaping after them. Firepaw watched, his tail twitching with amusement. Ravenpaw sat quietly at one side of the hollow, looking tense and unhappy. "Cheer up, Ravenpaw," called Graypaw. "I know you don't like training, but you're not usually this miserable." The scents of Lionheart and Tigerclaw warned the apprentices of their approach, and Ravenpaw mewed hastily. "I suppose I'm just worried about my shoulder getting hurt again." At that moment, Tigerclaw emerged from the bushes, closely followed by Lionheart. "Warriors should suffer their pains silently," growled Tigerclaw. He looked Ravenpaw straight in the eye. "You need to learn to hold your tongue." Ravenpaw flinched and dropped his eyes to the ground. "Tigerclaw's a bit grumpy today," Graypaw whispered into Firepaw's ear. Lionheart glanced at his apprentice sternly and announced, "Today we are going to practice stalking. Now, there is a big difference between creeping up on a rabbit and creeping up on a mouse. Can any of you tell me why?" Firepaw had no idea, and Ravenpaw seemed to have taken Tigerclaw's comment to heart and was holding his tongue. "Come on!" started Tigerclaw impatiently. It was Graypaw who answered, "Because a rabbit will smell you before he sees you, but a mouse will feel your paw steps through the ground before he even smells you." "Exactly, Graypaw. So what must you bear in mind when hunting mice?" "Step lightly," Firepaw suggested. Lionheart looked approvingly at him. "Quite right, Firepaw. You must take all your weight into your haunches, so that your paws make no impact on the forest floor. Let's try it." Firepaw watched as Graypaw and Ravenpaw immediately dropped into stalking crouch. "Nicely done, Graypaw," meowed Lionheart as the two apprentices began to move forward stealthily. "Keep your rear down, Ravenpaw. You look like a duck," spat Tigerclaw. "Now you try it, Firepaw." Firepaw crouched down and began to creep across the forest floor. He felt himself fall instinctively into the right position, and as he stepped forward, as silently and lightly as he could, he felt a glow of pride that his muscles responded so smoothly. "Well, it's obvious you've known nothing but softness," growled Tigerclaw. "You stalk like a lumbering kitty pet. Do you think dinner is going to come and lie down in your food dish and wait to be eaten?" Firepaw sat up quickly as Tigerclaw spoke, a little taken aback by his harsh words. He listened carefully to the warrior, determined to get everything right. "His pace and forward movement will come later, but his crouch is perfectly balanced," Lionheart pointed out mildly. "Which is better than Ravenpaw, I suppose," complained Tigerclaw. He cast a scornful look at the black cat. "Even after 2 moons of training, you're still putting all your weight on your left side." Ravenpaw looked even more dejected, and Firepaw couldn't stop himself from blurting out, "His injury is bothering him, that's all." Tigerclaw whipped his head around and glared at Firepaw. "Injuries are a fact of life. He should be able to adapt. Even you, Firepaw, have learned something this morning. If Ravenpaw picked up things as quickly as you, he'd be a credit to me instead of an embarrassment. Imagine being shown up by a kitty pet." He spat angrily at his apprentice. Firepaw felt his fur prickle with discomfort. He couldn't meet Ravenpaw's eyes, so he looked down at his paws. "Well, I'm more lopsided than a one-legged badger," mewed Graypaw, breaking off from his careful stalking to stagger comically across the clearing. "I think I'll have to settle for hunting stupid mice. They won't stand a chance. I'll just wander up to them and sit on them until they surrender." "Concentrate, young Graypaw. This is no time for your jokes," meowed Lionheart sternly. "Perhaps you might focus your mind better if you try out your stalking for real." All 3 apprentices looked up brightly. "I want each one of you to try catching real prey," meowed Lionheart. "Ravenpaw, you look beside the apple tree. Graypaw, there might be something in that big bramble patch over there. And you, Firepaw, follow the rabbit track over that rise. You'll find the dry bed of a winter stream. You may find something there." The 3 apprentices bounded away. even Ravenpaw finding some extra energy for this challenge. With the blood pounding in his ears, Firepaw crept slowly up over the rise. Sure enough, a stream bed cut through the trees ahead of him. In Leaf-Fall, he guessed it would carry the rainwater away from the forest and into the great river that cut through the RiverClan territory. Now it was dry. Firepaw crept quietly down the bank and crouched on its sandy floor. Every sense felt on fire with tension. Silently, he scanned the empty stream for signs of life. He watched for any tiny movement, his mouth open so he could pick up the smallest scent, his ears twisted forward. Then he smelled mouse. He recognized the odor instantly, remembering his first taste the night before. Wild energy surged through him, but he remained motionless, trying desperately to pinpoint the prey. He strained his ears forward until he picked up the rapid pulsing of a tiny mouse heart. Then a flash of brown caught his eye. The creature was scrambling through the long grass that draped the edges of the stream. Firepaw shifted closer, remembering to keep his weight on his haunches until he was within striking distance. Then he pushed back hard on his hind paws and sprang, kicking up sand as he rose. The mouse raced away, but Firepaw was quicker. He scooped it up into the air with one paw, threw it onto the sandy stream bed, and lunged on top of it. He killed it quickly with one sharp bite. Firepaw carefully lifted the warm body beneath his teeth and returned with his tail held high to the hollow where Tigerclaw and Lionheart waited. He had made his first kill. He was a true ThunderClan apprentice now. Chapter 6. Early morning sunlight streamed down into the forest floor as Firepaw roamed in search of prey. 2 moons had passed since he had begun his training. He felt at ease in this environment now. His senses had been awoken and educated in the ways of the woods. Firepaw paused to sniff the earth and the cold, blind things that moved within it. He caught the scent of a two-leg that had wandered the forest recently. Now that Greenleaf was fully here, leaves were thick on the branches and tiny creatures were busy beneath the carpet of leaf mold. Firepaw made a lean, strong shape as he moved silently through the trees, all his senses alert for the scent trail that would end in a swift kill. Today he had been set his first solo task. He was determined to do well, even if his task was only to bring back fresh kill for the clan. He headed for the stream that he had crossed on that first trek through the ThunderClan hunting grounds. It gurgled and spattered as it ran downhill over the smooth, round pebbles. Firepaw paused briefly to lap at the cold, clear water, then lifted his head and tested the air again for any scent of prey. The stench of a fox lay heavy in the air here. The smell was stale, so the fox must have drunk here earlier in the day. Firepaw recognized the odor. He had smelled it on his first visit to the forest. Since then, Lionheart had taught him it was fox scent, but apart from the glimpse of the fox's brush he had caught on that first outing, Firepaw had still never seen one properly. Sorry. Never mind. He struggled to screen out the fox stench and concentrate on prey scent. Suddenly, his whiskers prickled as he honed in on the warm blood beat of prey, a water vole busy about its nest. A moment later he saw the vole. The fat brown body was darting back and forth along the bank as it gathered grass stalks. Firepaw's mouth watered in anticipation. His last meal had been many hours ago, but he dared not hunt for himself until the clan had been fed. He remembered the words repeated by Lionheart and Tigerclaw time and time again. The clan must be fed first. Dropping into a crouch, Firepaw began to stalk the little creature. His orange belly fur brushed against the damp grass. He crept closer, his eyes never leaving his prey. Almost there. Another moment and he would be near enough to spring. Suddenly there was a loud rustle in the ferns behind him. The water vole's ears twitched and it disappeared down a hole in the bank. Firepaw felt the hackles rising along his spine. Whatever had ruined his first good chance of catching prey would have to pay. He sniffed the air. He could tell that it was a cat, but he realized with a jolt that he couldn't identify which clan it belonged to. The stale stench of fox still confused his smell sense. A growl rose in his throat as he began doubling back in a wide circle. He pricked up his ears and opened his eyes wide, seeking out any movement. He heard the undergrowth rustle again. It was louder now, off to one side. Firepaw edged closer. He could see the ferns moving, but the fronds still hid the enemy from view. A twig snapped with a sharp cracking noise. From the noise it's making, it must be big. Firepaw thought, preparing himself for a fierce battle. He leaped for the trunk of an ash and climbed swiftly and silently up to an overhanging branch. Below him, the invisible warrior came closer, and closer still. Firepaw held his breath, judging his movement as the ferns were pushed aside and a large grayish shape emerged. Grrrah! The battle cry rumbled in Firepaw's throat. Claws unsheathed, he launched himself at the enemy and landed squarely on a set of furry, muscular shoulders. He dug in hard, gripping with thorn-sharp claws, ready to deal out a powerful warning bite. Wah! What's that? The body below him shot straight up in the air, carrying him with it. Graypaw? Firepaw recognized the astonished voice and caught his friend's familiar smell, but he was too fired up to loosen his grip. Ambush! Row! Spat Graypaw, not realizing that the cat gripping onto his back was Firepaw. He rolled over it in an attempt to dislodge his attacker. Oof! Firepaw rolled with him, squashed and flattened beneath the heavy body. It's me, Firepaw! He yelled, as he struggled to pull free and sheath his claws. Rolling away, he sprang to his feet and gave himself a shake, which rippled all the way along his body to the end of his tail. Graypaw, it's me! He repeated. I thought you were an enemy warrior. Graypaw rose to his feet. He winced and shook himself. It felt like it, he grumbled, twisting his head around to lick his sore shoulders. You've raked me to shreds. Sorry, Firepaw mumbled, but what was I supposed to think with you creeping up on me like that? Creeping up! Graypaw's eyes were round with indignation. That was my best stealth crouch. Stealth? You still stalk like a lopsided badger, Firepaw teased. He flattened his ears playfully. Graypaw gave a hiss of delight. I'll show you, lopsided. The two cats leaped at each other and began rolling over in a play fight. Graypaw swiped at Firepaw with a hefty paw, and the young apprentice's head buzzed with stars. Oof! Firepaw shook his head to clear it, and then launched a counterattack. He managed to get in a couple of paw strikes before Graypaw overpowered him and held him down. Firepaw let his body go limp. You give up too easily, mewed Graypaw, loosening his grip. As he did so, Firepaw sprang to his feet, firing Graypaw off his back and into the undergrowth. Firepaw leaped after him and pinned him to the ground. Surprise is the warrior's greatest weapon, he crowed, quoting one of Lionheart's favorite phrases. He jumped nimbly off of Graypaw and began to squirm around in the leaf litter, enjoying his easy victory and the warmth of the earth against his back. Graypaw seemed unbothered by a second defeat of the morning. It was too fine a day for a bad temper. So, how are you getting on with your task? He asked. Firepaw sat up. I was doing just fine until you came along. I was about to catch a vole when your noisy trampling frightened it off. Oh, sorry, mewed Graypaw. Firepaw looked at his crestfallen friend. That's okay. You didn't know, he purred. Anyway, he continued, shouldn't you be heading to meet the patrol on the WindClan border? I thought you had to give them a message from Bluestar. Yeah, but there's plenty of time. I was going to do a little hunting first. I'm starving. Me too, but I've got to hunt for the clan before I can hunt for myself. I bet Dustpaw and Sandpaw used to swallow a shrew or two when they were on hunting duty, snorted Graypaw. I wouldn't be surprised if they did, but this is my first solo assignment. And you want to do it right, I know, Graypaw sighed. What is the message from Bluestar anyway? Firepaw asked, changing the subject. She wants the patrol to wait at the Great Sycamore until she joins them at Sunhigh. Seems that some ShadowClan cats have been prowling around. Bluestar wants to check things out. You'd best get going then, Firepaw reminded him. The WindClan hunting grounds aren't too far from here. There's plenty of time, answered Graypaw confidently. And I suppose I should help out after losing you that bowl. It doesn't matter, Firepaw mewed. I'll find another. It's such a warm day, there should be quite a few out and about. True, but you still have to catch them. Graypaw nibbled at a front claw, stripping off a piece of the outer sheath thoughtfully. You know, that could take you until way past Sunhigh, maybe even until sunset. Firepaw nodded without enthusiasm as his belly gave a rumble. He would probably have to make 3 or 4 hunting trips before he caught enough prey. Silverpelt would be in the sky before he got a chance to eat. Graypaw stroked his whiskers. Come on, I'll help you get started. I owe you that at least. We should be able to catch a couple of voles before I have to get going. Firepaw followed Graypaw upstream, glad of the company and the help. The fox stench was still in the air, but suddenly it smelled stronger. Firepaw paused. "Can you smell that?" he asked. Graypaw stopped and sniffed the air too. "Fox. Yeah, I smelled it earlier." "Doesn't it smell fresher to you now, though?" Firepaw asked. Graypaw sniffed again, opening his mouth slightly. "You're right," he murmured, lowering his voice. He swiveled his head to look across the stream and the bushes and the woods beyond. "Look!" he whispered. Firepaw looked. He saw something red and thick-haired moving among the bushes. It stepped into a clearing in the undergrowth, and Firepaw saw a low body, glinting red in the dappled sunlight. Its tail was heavily furred, and it had a long, narrow snout. "So that's a fox?" Firepaw whispered. "What an ugly muzzle!" "You can say that again," agreed Graypaw. "I was following one of those when we first met," whispered Firepaw. "More likely it was following you, idiot!" hissed Graypaw. "Never trust a fox. Looks like a dog, behaves like a cat. We must warn the queens that one has strayed into our territory. Foxes are as bad as badgers when it comes to killing young kits. I'm just glad you didn't catch up with the one you saw last time. He'd have made mouse meat out of a tiny scrap like you." Firepaw looked a little put out, and Graypaw added, "You'd stand a better chance these days, though. Anyway, Bluestar will probably send a warrior patrol to scare it off, put the queen's minds at rest." The fox had not noticed them, so the two apprentices continued along the stream. "So what does a badger look like?" Firepaw asked as they prowled along, sniffing to either side. "Black and white, short legs. You'll know one when you see one. They're bad-tempered, lumbering animals. They're less likely to raid the nursery than a fox, but they have a vicious bite. How do you think old Half-Tail earned his name? He hasn't been able to climb a tree since a badger bit his tail off." "Why not?" "Scared of falling. A cat needs his tail if he wants to land on his feet. It helps him spin in midair." Thank you, Graypaw. Firepaw nodded in understanding. As Firepaw had predicted, hunting was good that day. Before long, Graypaw had pounced on a small mouse, and Firepaw had caught a thrush. He quickly took its life. No time practicing killing techniques today. There were too many hungry mouths waiting back at camp. Firepaw kicked earth over the prey so that it would be safe from predators until he came back for it. Suddenly, a squirrel broke cover. Firepaw burst into action. "After it!" he called, pelting at full stretch over the springy woodland floor, with Graypaw at his heels. They slid to a halt as the squirrel scampered up onto a birch. "Lost it!" Graypaw growled in disappointment. Panting, the two cats stopped to catch their breath. The acrid scent that hit their mouths and noses surprised them. "The Thunder Path," Firepaw mewed. "I didn't realize we'd come so far." The two cats edged forward to peer out of the forest at the great dark path. It was the first time they had been here alone. A trail of noisy creatures growled along the hard surface, their dead eyes staring straight ahead. "Yuck!" Graypaw snorted. "Those monsters really stink." Firepaw twitched his ears in agreement. The choking smells made his throat sting. "Have you ever been across the Thunder Path?" he mewed. Graypaw shook his head. Firepaw took a step out of the cover of the forest. A border of oily grass lay between the trees and the Thunder Path. He crept slowly out onto it, then shrank back as a stinking monster hurtled past. "Hey, where are you going?" Graypaw mewed. Firepaw didn't reply. He waited till there were no more monsters in sight. Then he edged forward again, across the grass, right to the edge of the path. Cautiously he reached out a paw to touch it. It felt warm, almost sticky, heated by the sun. He looked up, staring across the Thunder Path. Was that a pair of eyes glinting out of the forest on the other side? He sniffed the air, but smelled nothing except the stench of the great gray path. The eyes on the other side were still shining in the shadows. Then they blinked, slowly. Firepaw was sure now. It was a ShadowClan warrior, and it was staring straight at him. "Firepaw!" Graypaw's voice made Firepaw jump, just as a huge monster, taller than a tree, roared past his nose. The wind from it almost toppled him over. Firepaw turned and ran as fast as he could back into the safety of the forest. "You mouse-brained fool!" spat Graypaw. His whiskers trembled with fear and anger. "What were you doing?" "I just wondered what the Thunder Path felt like," Firepaw muttered. His whiskers were trembling too. "Come on!" hissed Graypaw edgily. "Let's get out of here." Firepaw followed Graypaw as he leaped back away into the forest. Once they were a safe distance from the Thunder Path, Graypaw stopped to catch his breath. Firepaw sat down and began to lick his ruffled fur. I think I saw a Shadow Clan warrior, he mewed between licks, in the forest on the other side of the Thunder Path. A Shadow Clan warrior? Echoed Graypaw, his eyes wide. Really? I'm pretty sure. Well, it's a good thing that monster came past when it did, retorted Graypaw. Where there's one Shadow Clan warrior, there's more, and we're no match for them yet. We'd better get out of here. He looked up at the sun, which was almost directly overhead. I'd better get a move on if I want to meet that patrol on time, he mewed. See you later. He sprang away into the undergrowth, calling as he went. You never know. Lionheart might let me come and help you with the hunting once I've delivered this message. Firepaw watched him go. He envied Graypaw, wishing he were off to join a warrior patrol. But at least he'd have something to tell Dustpaw and Sandpaw when he returned to camp. Today he had seen his first Shadow Clan warrior.